Hey, IndyCar family, I'm IndyCar Dad, your host for IndyCar News in 5 minutes. I read and watch everything IndyCar, attend what I can, and then I try to summarize it all in 5 minutes. So, the big news is that the Indy 500 Open Test is done. It was 2 days, I was there for both of them, and I watched pretty much every lap. I had nothing else to do. I was in and among the teams, there's nobody really in attendance there, and no fans, I guess? I don't know if I'm still only a fan. But anyway, I spent a bunch of time looking at everything going on, including being able to see IndyCar's live timing and scoring and Firestone's live timing and scoring. I even spoke to drivers and crew members, and I learned something. I learned that unless you're on a team, very small number of people on the team, and you know how your test process is going, you have no idea who's fast and who's not. So you can sometimes tell when a team's in trouble. Maybe you can see if there's multiple part failures, but it was relatively quiet on there and there were no crashes and a few engines were swapped out. But aside from Jack Harvey's Chevy, I think all the engines swapped out were engines that have been running from the start of the season. So they're going to get swapped out soon anyway. They were both Honda and Chevy engines swapped out, so it's not like one is better or worse than the other. So there's still a lot of testing remaining, so even if your driver didn't look great on the timesheets, it really doesn't mean a lot. There's tow and no tow times, and someone has to decide whether a lap is a no tow lap or a tow lap, and that person can't be totally accurate. So you might see someone on a chart they don't belong on. Anyway, so that's kind of the situation at the Open Test. It was fun to watch, but there's not a lot you can glean from it. It's really good for the teams. And it pretty much is a work day for them. Like, I attended as a sort of a fan, and I realized I was like sort of standing around while everybody was working. So, in somber news, Alex Zanardi passed away. He was a great driver. I've been watching the series, and before it was what it was. He was always very aggressive, very fast, and funny. He came over from F1, and he was picked up by Chip Ganassi, kind of like a Marcus Ericsson type, but he had a ton of personality. He was really kind of a firebrand and a scamp. He was really fun to watch. He won 2 championships in kart in the early 90s when it's at its biggest, and then and when it was still rocking. Then he got recruited to go to Formula One again. It didn't super work out for him over there. He did a few years. Then he came back to kart, and when he did, he suffered a horrific crash in Germany. They were racing in Germany back then, and it was just absolutely brutal. But it didn't stop him. He returned to racing in sports cars, and he became a international hand cycling Paralympic 4-time gold medal winner. So that just goes to show you, the fight was in that dog, and Alex Zanardi was an inspirational guy. If you've never seen him race, you've probably seen one pass he made, which was a pass at the corkscrew, to win the race. So that was pretty fantastic as well. So, R.I.P. Alex Zanardi. So, as far as winners and losers this week, I like to do winners and losers. So, Dreyer and Reinbold, I say as a winner, they were fast right off the truck. I mean, there's a team that only does the 500. They don't do the other races. You'd think maybe they have some teething pains, but Jack Harvey and Connor Daly were fast right away, and they were fast for both days. Jack Harvey had engine failure. Big winner, Kyle Collette. He's a rookie. Rookies these days have never driven on the speedway. The guy shows up, and he has a hell of a day. He was fastest lap on day 2, so faster than everybody else. That's nothing wrong with that. So I actually talked to Kyle at the Open Test. I was just there. Nobody's there. And I was there, and he was walking by, and it was after sort of his rookie orientation, so I know he had done a bunch of laps, and I know he had never run an IndyCar at the Speedway, so I said, "Hey, Kyle," and he looked at me, and I said, "What do you think? First time driving the big car on the big track." And he goes, I said, "Was it fun?" And he looked at me, and he was like, "Yeah." It was fun. And that look was the look of a guy who dreamed of this all his life. Big ups to Kyle Collette. I'm a big fan these days, and every time I talk to the guy, a little bit more. So I hope he does well. This week, Alex Palou signed a multi-year contract extension with Chip Ganassi, so I'll put Chip in the winner category as well, along with his crew chief and his strategist and everybody over at Ganassi on the 10 car. That was a smart move for everybody involved. I'm sure the rest of the field isn't thrilled. So, one of the winners this week is me. I was able to go to the Open Test and I created some content for my social media that I think you'll really like. I try to be entertaining, and I don't just make content for content's sake. I also got to talk to the people who do publicity for IndyCar, which got me sort of in a little more anyway. I'm kind of an outsider, so it was nice. So I'm hoping eventually that I can do long form interviews with the drivers, sit down and ask them questions that they just don't have time to be asked and answer on TV. So I had a short chat and interview with Felix Rosenquist at the track. We did a little video on how you peel an Indy car out of the pits, like how do you get it out of the pit stall. So it's on my social media, IndyCar Dad. I think you'll like it. People seem to really like the video. So in the losers category, Prema's in the loser category again. So this was it. They really are not going to be at the Indy 500, but that wouldn't put them in the loser category. That was last week. The news this week is that they haven't been paying Callum a lot, and they owe him a bunch of money. So, bad news. Hopefully Callum seeks some, and other employees that are owed money seek something, because I know for a fact as a past employer that, when you go bankrupt, employee wages come first. So those employees could be like getting the proceeds from equipment that's being sold or something. They really should try to force the company into bankruptcy so they get their money. Anyway, there's some open test cars that didn't get many laps in. They might have blown an engine or something like that. Stingray Robb, Nolan Siegel, Louis Foster, Catherine Legg, and Jack Harvey all had some technical difficulties that kept them off the track. They got laps in, but just not as many as maybe they had wanted to. So what's next? The Indy GPs this week. The schedule isn't typical, so the race is on Saturday evening, afternoon, and that's because they want to avoid interfering with Mother's Day. So that means practice and qualifying will be on Friday, warm-up, and the race on Saturday. Very different than your normal road race weekend. I'll be there. If you see me at the track, please say hi. I'm friendly, and I'd like to hear from you. So and thanks for listening. I'm IndyCar Dad. You'll find me on socials like TikTok and Instagram as @IndyCar Dad. Thanks. You guys have a great day, and I hope to see you at the track.